good evening from Singapore, good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the 22nd edition of Cities on the Front Line, Building Back Better. This is our joint webinar series with the World Bank Group and Global Resilient Cities Network, and tonight we are going to be talking about safer schools. Who knew a year ago that one of the hottest topics would be whether schools would open back up, how they would open back up, and how long they would be able to stay open. Tonight's panel will address these questions as well as many other ways that schools can become safer, more stimulating, and enriching environments for students and communities around them. As we begin, I want to remind everyone of the purpose of these sessions. These are sessions that are designed for cities, practitioners, and those who are supporting cities as they respond with resilience from COVID-19. As such, the sessions are not officially on the record, so if you want to repeat anything that the speakers are saying tonight for a media publication, please reach out to us and we will clear that with the speakers themselves. I also want to remind everyone that we will be using the Q&A function, which you can find along the bottom of your screen. And we also have a couple of exciting polling questions for you. Those will pop up during the presentation. So please take a minute and respond to those questions. We want to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to my colleague, Francis Gasquier from the World Bank, to introduce our speakers tonight.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you very much. My name is Francis Gasquier. I'm a practice manager of the World Bank in the East Asia region. And indeed, as Lauren just mentioned, the topic of safer school and the topic of whether or when and how to open schools in the context of COVID-19 is in everybody's mind, foremost in parents, but also city officials who have to make this decision in many cases. We have three fantastic speakers to cover this topic today. Ardelean has held various positions in the mayor's office in Tbilisi, including the head of vice mayor office and the head of international relations department, and she's currently the CRO for Tbilisi. Alina Sava, she's a senior education specialist at the World Bank and an advisor to the Global Safer School program of the bank, a very little known program, but that is actually responsible for the retrofitting and improvement of the quality of education in hundreds of thousands of classrooms around the world. She'll tell us about her experience and her work in Bucharest, also in Eastern Europe. And finally, Raphaëlle Thiollier has worked with the city of Paris since 2009. She's a project manager for the Paris World Leading Oasis Schools project, and will tell us about her experience in the City of Light. So altogether, this will take between 35 and 40 minutes. We'll then open for questions. As Lauren said, please ask your question in the Q&A part of the WebEx. The material for this presentation will be distributed at the end, or probably by Monday, including the recording, the video of the presentation. So a very exciting topic, great speakers, and without further ado, let me turn to Anna to start the presentation today. Anna, over to you.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depends where you are in the world. I'm very excited to be part of this panel. Today, as we have mentioned, we'll talk about Tbilisi Kindergarten, what our opportunities are, what our wins are, and what the challenges and how to solve them. And of course, we'll talk about COVID-19 as well. So if you could move, before we start talking about kindergartens, if we could move to the next slide. Okay, so I want to introduce my country because my country is not as well known. It's a tiny country with less than 4 million population, and Tbilisi is the capital, and it has a history over 15 centuries ago. So it's an ancient city with its modern architecture with historic development. Tbilisi has lived through Soviet era. We recently went through lots of reforms, and recently in 2017, Tbilisi has become part of 100 Resilient Cities Network and started working on resilience. Please, next slide. So now we move to the kindergartens itself. So currently in Tbilisi, we have 181 kindergartens, and we service about 61,000 kids. So from 181 kindergartens, unfortunately, 159 are older buildings. They were built in Soviet era, and they are outdated, and they are vulnerable to risks like earthquake. So the way we manage our kindergartens is Tbilisi City Hall established Tbilisi Kindergarten Agency, who manages all the other buildings. They manage preschool educations, develop programs, create contracts with construction business. So they manage all 181 kindergartens, and all the funding is allocated from Tbilisi's budget, so from municipality budget. If you could move to the next session, next slide. So as I said, from 181, 159 kindergartens are older buildings, and we started to evaluate them. The problem is, so far we have evaluated 33 that is deemed structurally deficient so far, and they are great at risk. So we have relocated kids from these buildings, and we started reinforcing and rebuilding them. So this is the challenge, because on the outside, when you're moving kids from the one building, you need additional space to move kids to safer space where what is acceptable for the kids to take classes. And some of the challenges we have is to evaluate 159 buildings as fast as we can, to determine which ones are at risk, especially seismic risk, provide additional facilities for kids to take their lessons. And on top of it, we want to build new kindergartens, because every year we have deficiency in space. So currently this year, we had 1,200 children without spots. So unfortunately, 1,200 kids, they couldn't attend kindergarten because there's a limit, and we have a capacity restraints. To operate our kindergartens, it takes about $210,000 US, and to build the new kindergarten, it's about $1.5 million US. If we could move to the next slide. So far we started rehabilitating and building new kindergartens since 2015. So the kids' deficit has decreased a little bit. We had a lot bigger deficit. But if you see, since 2015, today is 2020, we have not done too well. We still have lots of kindergartens to evaluate and then reinforce or completely demolish and rebuild the new ones. So if we continue with this rate, it will take forever. And most important thing is the kids are in danger. So of course we identified most dangerous buildings, and we have evaluated them, and we are renting currently a couple spaces for temporary kids to attend. Unfortunately, this evaluation process, rebuilding, reconstruction, and reinforcement slowed down due to COVID. Unfortunately, we had to stop all the processes, but slowly it's starting up again. On top, what's the problem is in the middle of the center city, that's where the main deficit is. City Hall doesn't own land big enough and to build a new kindergarten to accommodate all the requirements and standards. So that's one of the big challenges. And of course, to find a temporary place for the kids. So it's kind of in parallel, not having enough funds, not having enough space, and not have adequate spaces to temporarily relocate the kids. So all this together kind of creates a big challenge for the city. If you can move to the next slide. So this is small map. You can see in the green squares an existing kindergartens, and the red dots are kindergartens that are at risk. And we are thinking that red dots will increase throughout the city. But if you could see right in the middle, it's where the city center is, and that's where the deficiency is. That's where we cannot accept kids in kindergartens. Suburbs, they're a little bit better situation. So we have some spaces, and we're continuing to accepting kids. If you could move to the next. So what are the resilience opportunities for Tbilisi kindergartens? As we said, Tbilisi started working on resilience in 2015 and 2017. I was appointed as a CRO. We started working on resilience strategy, and three main pillars for the strategy is the city that is protected and safe, city that is thriving, connected, and accessible, and a city that mitigates and adapts the climate change. So kindergarten project fits in all three pillars. And to build resilient, inspired kindergartens, this is our mission, that to ensure children can learn in a safe, protected, and high-quality education. They need space. They need green areas around their kindergartens. We need to improve access to kindergarten education, making a system more equitable, reduce overcrowding and disruption in the kindergarten classes. So unfortunately, some of the kindergarten classes we have, in some classes are 20, 40, and there are cases that we have 60 kids per kindergarten. So now with the COVID situation, you can imagine that is totally unacceptable. We need to reduce overwhelming and disruption in the kindergarten in general, in the classes. And we need to, of course, work on the energy consumption and operating costs. We need to reduce that. So city is working in any direction. We want to also educate our parents, students about climate change, about risks they take. So it all comes together. Now, this is not the programs that we will be working. This is the programs and things that we start already working in. Unfortunately, not fast rate, but slowly we're working on it. You can move to the next slide. And what are the next steps? So for the main mission is to complete structural integrity assessment for 181 schools. I'm saying 181, not just 159, because by 2024, city is going to, and the country is going to adopt a law and regulations that will have codes, construction codes. Unfortunately, right now, country is using general codes, that's Euro standards, or could be Asian standards or American standards, but country itself doesn't have codes to follow. So as you can imagine, it could be a little complicated. So by 2024, when we have standards, all 181 kindergartens have to be compliant. And this is one of the challenges. If you have no regulations, you may wake up one day and you cannot operate with any kindergartens, with COVID or without COVID. So that's one of the main things to make sure we evaluate, start working on them, and reinforce them, demolish the ones that they're at risk. We need to determine appropriate construction standards that's applicable by 2024, as I said. And of course, identify sites that and the land where new kindergartens can be built. And of course, by this year, we need to be prepared for COVID-19. If you could move to the next slide. So let's talk about general situation in Georgia and Tbilisi. So in Georgia, we've had total 1,206 cases. Unfortunately, 17 deaths. As of currently, today's numbers are totally recovered, 987, and active cases, 202. And this number goes down and up. We were all the way down to 80 active cases, but we started opening the borders. We get more tourists coming to the country, and internal contingency is not as active. So we could say we are actively managing COVID. But the main question is, school's going to start actually in September or not? Yes, we are actually starting September 14th. We are reopening, so kids will go to the school. Currently, we're waiting for Ministry of Health, Education, and Labor to give us the directions and regulations how we're going to accept kids in the school. But during the COVID time, what city has done, every 2 weeks, we were giving families of our students, our kids, non-perishable foods to make sure kids were well fed and they received all the nutrition they needed. So going forward, as I said, situation is not great. We still have lots of work to do, but the main thing is city is active. City is very eager to make kindergarten safe, more resilient, with help of networks, with help of different cities. Paris was great influence for us with Green Oasis. So with new kindergartens, we're trying to incorporate more greenery, more sustainable, and more ecology-friendly environment. So I wish everybody well, and I will thank you for my presentation and listening, and I'll hand to Alina from the World Bank.
Thank you, Anna. I think Bucharest has so many similarities with Tbilisi. Like many other cities around the world that are in danger of earthquake, we have very similar problems, and I would show you further. So I would share my screen now. Okay. Okay. So this is Bucharest. Bucharest city is a very lively city. It's capital of Romania, so please do not be mistaken with Budapest, because Budapest is capital of Hungary, and we are very proud of Bucharest. So we love tourists, we love foreign people, we have great food, we have low-priced drinks, we have Belle Epoque buildings, as you can see in this slide, but also some buildings from communist era, like House of Parliament, that you could see it from the moon, by the way. So, and in addition, we have some medieval churches. But when you want to live in a city, you are looking for health services and educational services. Parents move around in a city and rent houses or buy houses when a school is very good. That's why I think schools is one of the main drivers of developing a city. And we should create more attractiveness to a city. Now, given the high uncertainty of the pandemic situation, we can continue disrupt the education process as we did before, or we can build some resilience. So we can bring some innovation. We need to adapt to the new normal, and we need to be more flexible. So we cannot back in time before pandemic era. We need to be different, and we need to build more resilience, and we need to collaborate more. We need to be accountable for what we are doing. So assessing the learning, how would you do that? So you start first of all to look into the mirror, and you assess the learning spaces that you have. You look to the data that we have. You look to the construction and permits, as Anna already told you. You want to see if basic conditions are met, if schools are safe. Who is in charge with school? Who is responsible when a child is dying in a school? This is really important because it triggers many other regulations that you need in a country, because we can see what happened in Beirut because they had not enough regulation. ITC equipment, you need connectivity. You need to reopen schools. So you can look on this image here. On paper, everything was rock solid, but when they go into the field, the reality is not, it wasn't so. In Bucharest, as of now, we have 50% of the buildings are more than 50 years old. So we have really old buildings because schools were built before earthquakes. Some of them were affected by 2 major earthquakes. So, and also they were built under a different code of construction. Less buildings were built recently, as also we are in a demographic decline. what we need to do is to consolidate, retrofit 65 buildings in really, it's like an immediate call. Otherwise, we put in danger many of the children, especially those that are learning downtown, and they are placed usually in kindergartens and in high schools. So our elite and in universities. So our elite, in case of an earthquake that is estimated to come, our elite will die, and we cannot afford that. Sometimes in the pandemic, we are very happy that our children were at home. In addition to that, it's not only the earthquake; it's also we lack access for people with physical disabilities. 50% of schools are lacking space. They operate in 2 or 3 shifts. We have also overcrowded classrooms. So you can have in a preschool, instead of 20 kids, you can have 36. And this will not be possible after pandemic situation. So 88% of the preschool is exceeding right now, and we need additional teachers. Before, you can see a crowded schools and look to the new normal. So we need more space with less kids. How we approach that? So first of all, we work together and prepare scenarios with Ministry of Education, with people from health specialists, a representative of parents and students, intergovernmental bodies. So it was really an important effort to acknowledge the situation and to prepare the best scenarios. So we said the approach should be like that. When the community will, the number of cases will be increased, use
Alina, sorry to interrupt. Can you go to the full screen mode, because the slides themselves are not changing?
Oh, but I'm in the full screen mode.
Okay, maybe try to press press the button across the top with the little arrow, the slideshow button.
Okay, let me see.
The one right above design.
Okay,
design,
and I will go from the current slide. Now it's better?
Yes.
Okay.
Not changing yet.
You can see it?
No, it's not changing yet. Where it says file across the top, then file, then home, insert, draw, design. Right above design, there's a little arrow. Can you push that one with your mouse? See if that will do it.
I think maybe we should use Alex to put the presentation, and I will just stop sharing now, and I will ask him to
Great, we'll do that. No worries.
Just to be okay.
Here it comes. So, just a moment, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulty. The slides will be right back.
I don't know what happened to me. It was really fine. I was so happy. I was in the flow.
Sorry, which slide number were you on for the team to pick it back up?
The approach. So the slide number.
There we go.
6.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, we want to contain the spread of virus, and we will not open schools when the virus is not contained. Then secondly, we want younger children to come to school. Preschoolers and primary students and students with special education needs, they need to attend in person, because online learning for them is not so effective. And also school is a social emotional support for them and the base facilitator of learning. The third thing, we need to really follow the recommendation received from public health testers. So it's not like what happened these days in Romania, and sometimes people go in holidays and they do not follow the rules, and we need to strengthen the rules and wear masks everywhere, including inside and outside. We want more testing, regular checks, smaller and shorter classes, lower average time spent in school, longer breaks, wearing masks, and physical distancing. We follow the rules in schools, and because this is something that we did also during the examination, and it worked, the number of increases didn't go up. And we realized that for children that are lower than 10, the risk of infection is lower, and they have less receptors in the nose. They cannot spread from one to another, but we need to be very careful of their teachers. The adequate learning spacing that we think through now is to use in every school one shift, to have an individualized classrooms and even seats, less than 25 students per class of 52 square meters to allow 1.5 meters between students. And we need mandatory new modular temporary classrooms. These temporary classrooms can be used now in your schoolyard. You can retrofit the school that is in danger, and at the same time you can use it when you have a different area with more kids, and also including in the Roma communities that are nomad. The challenges that we have, come back again to them: 50% of school overcrowded classrooms, 44% of students in Bucharest, that is really a developed city, lack digital devices, and 45,000 students, so 17% of the Bucharest students population, learning buildings that are not retrofitted and are at high seismic risk. We can go to the other slide. School reopening scenarios. We have 3 scenarios. The green scenario is for in-person readiness. We would come in person. Here we have kindergartens that are ready, and what it is not ready or partially ready are the high schools and elementary schools. In the hybrid scenario, when only pre-primary and primary kids are coming to schools regularly, the secondary students will come only every 2 weeks by rotation. So 2 weeks they learn online, 2 weeks they come to school. Second slide. Okay, in person scenario, you can see 30% of schools are not ready to open, and another 32 are only partially ready. So they need to shift from 2 shifts to 1 shift. So we have 62% of schools that are really not ready to start on September 14. But in the hybrid scenario, when we use rotation, we already move to a readiness that is lower. So only 40% will be not ready to start. That's why we can go on for the third scenario. Please, next slide. And the third scenario is the digital scenario. But in this situation, we have 44% of students that really lack access. What happened in the last school when we closed the schools is that we promised that we go digital, and we wanted to continue the education. In reality, the vulnerable kids that are poor, they are Roma, they come from rural, they come from migrant parents. They are in monoparental families. For them, it was very difficult. They didn't have access, and also for some teachers that were lacking the digital skills, they could not teach. So in reality, the digital solution, it was not the best one, but it was offered as a solution, but it was not in place. It was like a right, but not like a guarantee. So next slide. So because 44% of the kids needs digital devices, we need to do some priorities, because it's true that we don't have money for everyone. So the priorities should go, the digital devices, digital content should go for the most vulnerable ones. So the Roma, students with special education needs, students with disabilities, and poor. They must be prioritized in this scenario, and we have some scenarios for them. And after that, we need to prioritize lower secondary and upper secondary. The bank is financing laptops and digital content and teacher training for upper secondary, and in this situation, this is good that the bank could shift and restructure the project just to really cope with the pandemic and help the kids in the situation that we are now. But at the same time, in the hybrid model, we need to understand that when a school is closed for the primary students, we still need some digital devices. Next. We cost it out for Bucharest, what is the need of investment? And we realized that is $150 million are needed. For what? For portable classroom units. in preschool and primary, for portable classroom units in lower and upper secondary, for digital devices, for retrofitting, for repairs and rehabilitation, hiring additional teachers in preschool and primary, and then care services, auxiliary staff, counselors, logopeds, IT personnel. So these are really critical and essential stuff. Next slide. Now, this is a new kindergarten. You can see the space it's arranged differently, and you can play in, you can go for art or for mathematics or for, so it's run by activities. Next. Again, you can see the spatial and the distancing is provided. Next one. This is sport area, and the dots, it shows you where the kids should be. Of course, because it's a kindergarten, don't imagine that they sit like that as the spot you see here. Next, but there is a lot of space for the chairs, for the tables, for the playing only in pairs. Next. Again, tables are arranged just to provide the physical distancing. This is a theater arrangement. Next. This is for reading. It will be fantastic. It is fantastic for them to read in a very comfy mode. Next. And then look how happy they could be. So they can build, they can still stay together, and they would learn how to go with the physical distancing, because this is not social distancing, this is physical distancing. Next. What we recommend in our investment. So it's not, if you look to this picture, when the principal and teachers look to the child, they say, instead of fixing the buildings, we invested in new school uniforms. Because yes, that type of uniforms is protecting them of earthquake. But we need to be very careful because we build now resilient schools. We need to think for the school of the future. First of all, we reform policies. We need to bring more financing. And we need to create a learning space that influences the school climate. The climate should be positive always. The teaching should be now adapted to the new modalities, switch between and use more interactivity, even digital. We need better learning outcomes. We need to move from traditional space to the new paradigm. We need to compensate for learning. We need to accelerate learning. Already our kids lost a lot last year. So we need to find ways, and innovative ways for teaching faster and better. We need to use colors. We need to use personalization of the space because they stayed at home now. They learned at home. They want to see the school at their new home. We need friendliness, we need collaborative, we need to be intuitive, and we need to put students at the core of all our activities. And we need to provide more equity because the more vulnerable are the ones that really need our support. Next. So as I told you, we need the children to feel physically and socio-emotionally safe in our schools. We need our children to be respected and protected in quality learning spaces. So thank you. I would give the floor to Raphaëlle.
Hi everyone, I'm Raphaëlle Thiollier from Paris. I will now share my presentation. I think it's okay. Let me know if not. So I will now speak about the Oasis Schoolyard project in Paris, which is part of the resilience strategy of the city of Paris. So yes, concerning the context, this action is a project and action of the resilience strategy of Paris, which was written and adopted by the City Council in 2017. And the idea is really to transform the schoolyards in Paris. We have a lot of schoolyards and schools in Paris. managed by the city. So I will speak in detail after that about the project, but it's also a goal of the Paris Climate Plan, because the idea is part of the project is to adapt the schoolyards to climate change. And it's also a project supported by the ERDF, European Regional Development Fund, and a specific program called Urban Innovative Action. And the project was selected to be part of this program, and it's a very a chance for the program, because it's really helping us to having new tools and ideas and sharing at a European level. So it's really interesting for the Oasis project. So now I will speak about the main guidelines of the project. The idea is basically to promote the well-being in the schoolyards. It's really important, and it's the heart of the project, to have better schoolyards for the children and for the community around them. So of course we need to adapt them to climate change. And the idea is also throughout the project to raise the awareness of the children and the teachers too, and the parents, about the emergency of doing something about climate change, because Paris and a lot of other cities will be facing a very difficult change in the next decade. So we need to be ready and prepared. That's one of the part of the project, the climate change adaptation, and we also want to have more co-designed spaces with children. So we want to involve them in the schoolyard we are designing, because they have something to tell and to teach us also about what is the best for them. So we want to have a very participatory approach, and above all, and we want also, to have a participatory approach concerning the openings of the schoolyard, because it's something very important in the project, the openings, but I will talk more about that later. But we want to have the residents around the schoolyard involved in the participatory process to open the schoolyard. And so the project is also about social cohesion reinforcement. First of all, it's about the interactions between children themselves within the schoolyards during breaks and lunchtime, and they spend a lot of time in the schoolyards, the children and the students. So we want to have a better social climate also in the schoolyard, and to develop soft skills and social skills for children throughout the project, to help having a better climate, school climate, I can say. And we also want to open the schoolyard to make them be a place in the neighborhoods which is open and which is a place to share and to meet the neighbors, our neighbors, and to have activities together, in the idea to reinforce social cohesion, because the social inequalities are something really important in Paris, and we think at the resilience team that it's a really interesting and important way to struggle against social inequality, to have place to be together and to learn better how to live together. So, yes. Concerning the project deployment, today in Paris we have more than 700 schoolyards in Paris. It's also it's pre-elementary schools, elementary schools, and secondary schools, because the city is managing all these schools. So it's more than 70 hectares throughout all around Paris. So it's a big, very important area. And our goal is to transform them all during the next decades, I think. But we hope to have a very significant and effective impact when the schoolyards and all these hectares will be transformed. And we already began with 3 schoolyards in 2018, sorry. And last year we transformed 28 schoolyards. And today we are transforming around 15 schoolyards this summer. Of course, we have some delays because of the COVID situation. And we hope to transform each schoolyard until 2040. Sorry. So I will just show you very quickly some example of design and planning we are doing in Paris. The idea is really to digitalize and also make a schoolyard more adventurous in Paris. And it's something really difficult because, as you can see on this example, it's a very short and small schoolyard in the center of Paris in a very dense neighborhood. And we have to be creative and inventive to have also a place to do sports, because sports is in the major part of the elementary school done in the schoolyard in Paris. So it's important to save a big place to do sports, but we also want to do sports in different ways, and climbing and running and yes, having adventures is also a way to be active in the schoolyard. So it's something we want to try to change. And also in Paris, we have, of course, our schoolyards are today really mineral and not really without shadows and without shade, and also without water, and so very impervious. So we want to change all that to have greener and pervious and more fresh schoolyard. But we also want to have a place to play. And what we learn from other cities and other countries is that having hills or activities and having a landscape is something really important in the schoolyard. So that's why we want to change and having different planning in our Parisian schoolyards. Now I will end with that. The challenges we are facing today in Paris. We really want to have natural and low-tech amenities because it's something much more resilient. So we want to really make nature in the center, in the heart of the schoolyard, and having also daily basis contact between children and nature. We think it's something really important to make them aware citizens about climate change and about living in a natural and happy environment. So it's something really important we want to do in Paris. We also want to have a part of learning through risks, because we think learning through risk is a way to be more resilient when you grow up after that. And it's something really important to the child development, to having a part of risk in your education. So it's something we want to reintroduce in our schoolyards too. And it's really important to change the professional practices concerning this way to see risk and how risk can be an opportunity, something really important to grow in good conditions. We also have a challenge in terms of maintenance, because it's a completely new way to maintain and to clean and to our schoolyard. So it's something new, and we need to be very inventive about it. And now openings, because it's something really important for today. It's also a challenge because in France it's not something very developed and done already. We really have a very security way to see schoolyard, and that the school is something very precious, and it's not really easy to enter school in Paris and in France. And above all, in Paris we have schools where you need to enter first before going to the schoolyard. So it's not very easy to share the space with the residents, because it's something difficult to enter the schools. But we already have some projects very interesting where schools are open to local NGOs, for example, and it's really working. So we want to develop that kind of project, and we are at the very beginning of the idea to open schoolyards during weekends, for example, and we are thinking of the good conditions to do that. So we need to have more workshops and ideas with a lot of people, but we already know that we want to have rules to open this schoolyard, to have the same rules, even if you are in the south or north of Paris, to open the schoolyard. And we also want to do that with local communities, so NGOs, parents, and residents already involved in the city life. So we want to, yes, have people around the table to think with us about these openings. And we also think that COVID might be maybe an opportunity to think ways differently, and that the idea that being outdoor is something really safer than indoors with this pandemic. And we are thinking about the idea that outdoor learning may be also a very interesting way to learn today and to keep physical distanciation and to learn in different ways, and very interesting for children too. So we want to do this crisis an opportunity, and maybe having also more space outdoor to gather and to have activities together is something important. So I hope we can open in the next month the schoolyards to also be more resilient in Paris. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna, Alina, and Raphaëlle, for these 3 excellent presentations. Very interesting. We're going to start the Q&A. All 3 of you presented some fairly ambitious program to transform the learning environment, particularly for the little children, which I think I have a very young kid, so I'm very sensitive to it and very sympathetic to some of these programs. There's a very good question from Fernando Ramirez, who's actually the head of the Global Safer School program at the World Bank, who's asking, do you think that the COVID-19 crisis actually will open new opportunities, as it has helped sensitize authorities as to the importance of this learning environment, of the school infrastructure, the need to improve the infrastructure and make it safer for everyone? Do you think it'll bring policy reform or increased investment? And maybe we can just go in the same order of the presentation. Maybe Anna, you can start, and then Alina, and then you, Raphaëlle, in your respective cities. Anna, over to you.
Yeah, I think, yes. If we don't, it's human nature as usual. If you don't make a policy, if you don't make mandatory, people try to derail from some kind of standard. So as more constructive and more regulations we have, absolutely that will be good. For Tbilisi case, as of right now, we even don't have the standards to build for the country. So we don't have a code yet. So by 2024, I will be very happy. So all the regulations could be adapted to merge with COVID-19 regulations and safer buildings. So absolutely, I think it's necessary. Because again, the kids are at risk. You have to take precautions. You have to make things mandatory.
And do you think that the COVID-19 crisis helps move this regulation faster, that the authorities are now more keen to do it and allocate resources for the necessary investments?
I don't think it has moved faster, but it created more awareness and more urgency. So I don't think they will move the date, but again, by 2024, it should be all good to go.
Alina?
I think in any of our countries, you would see that everyone stress on health, first of all, okay? and then on jobs. And then the education is the Cinderella. So we are on the third place, but in a long run, this will be dramatic. So the governments that are not prioritizing education right now and right away, they will have a huge deficit in human capital, and they will have lower results. That's why sometimes a push and more awareness, it gives you some results. And I think in Romania now, the government understood the importance of school reopening, and we try to solve more issues than before. So we try to retrofit. Of course, we are in a very good position because we would receive money from the EU funds. We have resilient and recovery funds that are really attractive, and we need to focus on spending that, but we need to focus on spending more efficiently and more effectively. And as much as possible, we need to innovate. So now is the time. If not now, when? But again, education needs more financing, needs more budget, needs more attention, because it is about our kids. So we took this as we take this challenge as a new opportunity, and that's why we work more in collaboration, which in last years it's not happened in Romania quite frequently. But now we realize that we need to have all the voices together and to have really clear path. And the bank, usually it helps on that. And the bank is really present in Romania, and it's convening power. So this is our role, to understand, to do the best thing, and to invest in schools, in infrastructure, but also in the soft measures, because only the infrastructure, it will not help. It is the third teacher, but you need teachers that have digital skills, that need training, that need attention, and then we'll be in a better place. Still, we have more to work. At least we are aware about our challenges.
Thank you, Alina. I guess you mean the World Bank, because there are many banks around. Raphaëlle, any comments on whether the COVID crisis has helped move the agenda forward? Oh, I think you're still on mute, Raphaëlle.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. I said I don't know if I can speak for all France or maybe all Paris as well, but I think, yes, some things have changed, the way we saw education and the way we saw children too during this crisis. So I hope it will be, yes, something really important. And as I was saying, and you were saying, an opportunity for us to reconsider what more important challenges in education are for the next decade. So I hope it will be something important.
Thank you all for your answers. I want to circle back to one of the topics that Alina mentioned in the end of her answer, which was actually around the kinds of skills that the teachers need in this new environment. And expand that a little bit to the kinds of skills that everyone in our cities need to really respond and bounce back from COVID. And ask a bit of a different question, because a lot of the discussion has focused both on younger children and also on physical spaces. What opportunities are you seeing in your cities to create re-education, retraining opportunities? Are you seeing a big demand for this in schools? And what ways might you be thinking about invigorating the schools, whether it be in terms of the kinds of curricula or the kinds of spaces that create the learning opportunities that the larger community needs? Anna, shall we start with you again, then go to Alina, and then Raphaëlle?
Yeah, absolutely, Lauren. So throughout the year, even without COVID, it's one of the important things to prepare teachers to new standards, new requirements. As years goes by, kids are, different generations have different needs. They are a little bit more computer savvy versus not. So there's as the time goes by, kids changing, environment is changing, and absolutely teachers have to be retrained to adapt the situation. We do have in Tbilisi programs that every year teachers go through the training, mandatory training. They have to be, their requirements to be not the high school, but university graduated. They have to go through certification, and throughout the years, they do have to go through different certifications that they could work with the kids. If they do not pass the certain requirements, unfortunately, they cannot work in the kindergartens. And especially with COVID, again, we did have online schooling as well, so not with the kindergartens, but schools. We had online lessons, so private schools did this a little bit different way, every day connecting, and there are so much challenges. You have teacher who has just a limited ability to use a computer, and now you pretty much have all their curriculum in front of the computers. They had to do presentations, they had to use the Teams or the different Zoom, different applications, so it was so new to them, and government did a really good job preparing and making teachers ready. It took time, but at the end, as I have two kids that go to school, I say, of course, online school is not great, but I can say that my school has did tremendous job literally teaching every subject as much they could within that 20-25 minutes. So again, school, the teachers do need support and do need a training to adapt and don't get stressed.
This is a very important question, and I need it thinks a lot of. I think it needs another session. In a community, we have students. First of all, we need to think what basic skills we need to train, them to acquire to have higher productivity, because employers are complaining about in Romania at least, about the low level of skills. And we need to, for example, to improve critical thinking, collaboration, and so on and so forth. This is not easy. For teachers, we need reskilling. So we need reskilling, we need to teach them to create digital content. We need them to understand how to use interactive textbooks, because we do have interactive textbooks, but they need to practice it more, and they need to understand not only how to communicate through Zoom, but how to use other technologies. And the most important, they need to bring more interactivity, less lecturing, and in a way transfer from the offline to the online, which is really quite difficult. Then we need parents. Parents, you could see during the pandemic, the parents that could help their children, those children were in a different place, because I could help my children, and then my children finished the school with good outcomes. But it's not the case for many of other parents, and some of them imagine that in Romania are illiterate. So with the illiterate parents, when we need to send them back to school in a second chance program, and at the same time to create some digital skills for them. Otherwise, we would lose in a longer term. And then we have authorities. Authorities need to learn to really be digital. In Romania, we have this issue. Authorities need to understand that it's easier, it's more efficient to be digital and to go digital like the Estonia did. So I think we have 4 categories, and imagine that families these days become one of the most vulnerable categories. You are not only working, you are teaching, you are providing support, you are cooking, you are doing everything at home. This is not easy. So for any family, it was not easy, and we need to acknowledge that. And we need to think that they need support, and we need to create an enabling environment for everyone. So it's students, teachers, parents, and authorities. And teachers need consistent training. So they don't need the training for 1 week or 2 weeks. They need really to be involved in long-term training. Otherwise, with 1 week or 2 weeks, that's nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry. Concerning France, I think we also had digital issues during COVID situation, and teachers also need to be trained in French and having more skills concerning digital learning. But I think we also want to think in the Oasis program and project, having new ways to teach, and above all to make nature something really important for learning. I think there is really important and interesting resources all around the world, and above all, also in UK concerning outdoor learning, and what tremendous possibilities you can have with very interesting and very inventive, what a landscape can be very useful for learning. So we want to also make some new activities and new way to teach throughout the Oasis program. So nature is something really important for us to think about in this education and training for teachers. I don't know if I'm clear.
Raphaëlle, actually, just to reassure you and to reinforce what you just said. In fact, in the polling question, most of the participants agree with you that providing some natural environment to children is one of the essential elements that we should think about. I think we're getting to the end of this session, and so I have the responsibility of closing the session. One thing that's really stricken me about this 3 presentation is that your presentation went well beyond COVID-19, and in fact we need to provide resilient, safe, but also enticing environment to children. But the fact that very often buildings are unsafe is a problem that leads to many other problems, the lack of space and the impossibility to teach. And in fact, the COVID, like in many other sectors, the COVID crisis has surfaced many of the problems that were already existing before. And I think in all the 3 presentations, you also pointed to the fact that we should use this crisis to try to solve these fundamental problems linked to infrastructure, linked to the quality of the environment in which we teach, and also all the software element, the teachers, and other elements. I think we could have several sessions on this, maybe we will, but I think time is running out. So I want to thank you for joining us. Thank all the participants, the audience for joining us today. Next week, we will speak about the issues of mobility and transport in cities. The session will happen at the same time as well on Thursday, so we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much, and have a great end of the week to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice week.